So let's talk about your food formula. Regardless of your burner type, there are food formula guidelines that I want to walk you through here to remind you if you're feeling stuck and you're not sure what to how to make food choices. I always want you to come back to this video to get a reminder for how to eat to have balanced hormones. There are couple differences here based on your burner type, but it's relatively all pretty similar. So the first thing that I want you to think about is keeping your meals super simple. One of the challenges with trying to eat various foods and lots of different recipes is we make it really complicated. It actually doesn't need to be that complicated. So is always start with protein. Every single meal and every snack should have protein in it. We want to go the leaner the best. You can go back to your food guide for a reference, but don't feel like you need to keep this perfect. I just want you to always think about protein first, whether it is a meal, a real meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or a snack. I tend to find that a lot of people gravitate towards starchier snacks, and that's not really doing anything great for your hormonal balance. You're actually driving your cravings up by doing that, and you might actually stop fat burning and increase fat storage. So we want to be aware of really keeping protein front and center. One of the main reasons why is because protein is a filler. Protein is satiating and filling, takes longer for your body to break down. So you really want, and if you're choosing lean protein that is also very filling, you have the ability to have less of the more calorie dense foods like starches and fats. Okay, the next thing that I want you to think about is getting lots of vegetables. Obviously, we want to get vegetables for all of the micronutrients that we can get from having a wide spectrum of vegetables. So the more the merrier. All types of vegetables can be a part of the party, but you can have vegetables as often as you like. Keep it on the non-starchy vegetable side of your list. If you are having starchier vegetables, then you want to have those within your bite guidelines. But vegetables, the non-starchy vegetables you're free to have as much of those as possible. Next, eat as many fruits as you'd like. So obviously, fruits are where we have a little bit of a distinction between a muscle burner and a sugar burner, because in a mixed burner we'll have two types of lists, one that is non-starchy fruits and the other that is starchy fruits. And the starchier fruits we want to keep to our bite limits. But for muscle burners, all fruit is available. For sugar burners, we want to focus on those non-starchy fruits, so those things like berries and pears and apples, the ones that have a higher fiber and lower starch content. So the next thing is, this is not a no-carb diet, and I want to be very clear on that because there are some people that actually need a little bit more starch, like muscle burners. So we want to make sure that we're eating the starch that's right for us. This is not a no-carb diet, but if you are eating starch, you want to look at the quality of your starch. Now, this is where it's super important for us to have a psychological conversation about what you're interested in eating. If you are an abstainer, if you're someone that benefits more from taking certain food groups out, by all means go ahead and do that. I don't want you to feel like you have to do that, but for me, if I were going on this plan, what I probably would avoid is those higher starch, white, processed starches. So I would probably take those out because for me, having more volume is important. So I would rather have more bites of a non-starchy starch, if that makes sense. It's very important that you know that this is not a no-carb diet. I do not want to take out carbs on you. I want you to just keep them within the starch window. This is going to take time, and don't feel like you have to get it perfect right from the start. But I do want you to be super aware that if you're eating a whiter, more processed starch, you're going on the lower end of your bites. You can go on your higher end of your bite range if you are eating more complex starch that has more fiber. The starches that I like best: oats, potatoes, rice, and quinoa. Those are the ones that I like the best on this plan. If you are someone who likes to moderate, like you like to be able to not have foods that you have to take out completely, this is awesome for you because what you're gonna wanna do is have a starchier carb, but you're gonna have less bites of it. So if you choose to have white bread with your meal, then you're gonna have like 2 to 3 small bites of that bread, and then you're gonna move on. And you're not gonna have more starch, complex starch. That's gonna be your only starch at the meal. If you're someone like me that likes to abstain from certain things, like if I were to have 2 bites of a white bread that was really delicious bread, that would be pretty much torture to stay away from. And so some people might like the bite rule with being able to moderate the higher sugar starches, but for me, I would much rather have one of the more complex starches and eat a couple more bites of that. But keep it within the bite range and be super diligent on this, because this is probably the biggest area where a dieters miss, probably eating way more starch than they need to be. We don't need to take it out, but we need to eat it well within the range. Alcohol counts as a starch, so if you're going to eat it, you're going to count it as your bites. This is an important piece. So depending on your burner type, I have sent out guidelines for how I want you to structure your meals throughout the day. Some sugar burners benefit more from having 3 larger meals per day rather than having a bunch of small meals per day. For everyone other than the ones that I've told to have 3 bigger meals per day, I want you to eat a bunch of smaller meals throughout the day. The reason why I want you to do this and starting out, and it might be more meals than you're used to. It's going to be basically like a small breakfast, a snack, a small lunch, a snack, a dinner, and maybe a snack before bed. People do better doing this when they're starting this type of plan because they're able to manage their hunger a little bit better. They're not waiting as long in between eating, and they're able to manage their hunger a little bit better. So they eat smaller but more frequent meals. Some people on this plan will do much better having bigger, like a decent size breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and cutting out snacks completely. The next 2 things are guidelines on foods that tend to be overdone by dieters. And so from the start, I want to help you keep those things in check. So the first one is dairy. Dairy tends to be a little bit more allergenic. So you may not know that you have an allergy to milk, but you may have a little bit of sensitivity to milk proteins like casein. So we're going to keep milk to a minimum. We're going to keep dairy to a minimum, and we're only going to have it as condiments. If you can take dairy out completely, I would recommend that you do it. Dairy does have an insulin response. So it tends to, especially for sugar burners, it tends to have a little bit more of a sugar response. And we want to remove that out of the plan so that we can minimize cravings. We're going to limit nuts to 1 handful or 2 tablespoons a day. People tend to overdo it on nuts, and this gets more fat in the diet than we need to, and it's super calorie dense. So we want to make sure that if we're using nuts that we're not overusing them. Lastly, I want you to keep an eye on hydration. Lots of times during the day when we think we're hungry, we're actually just thirsty. So I want you to stay super hydrated and try and get 2 liters of water every single day. Okay, that's it for the food formula guidelines. And if you have any questions, just let me know. But always come back here if you need a reminder on how to structure your food intake so that you are doing your best to balance your hormones.